So last weekend, I finally got around to seeing Sinners. Why did it take me so long, you might ask? Especially considering the fact that everybody has been talking and raving about how good the movie is. Which it is, by the way. It is very good. Absolutely exquisite in its execution. Ryan Coogler did that. But I didn't go to see the movie all this while because the thing is, your girl is not a big fan of horror movies. I don't watch them often, and when I do, I most certainly don't go and see them in the cinema. I'm a firm believer in the fact that true horror is one that you sit with at home, carefully examine the crevices of it, so that every shift of shadow, every wail of the wind, every bump in the night, every twitch, every sigh, every echo, it all has your adrenaline pumping because who knows? Did the horror find its way from your screen and make its way into your reality? Messed up, I know. But that's how my brain works, and I really do like it. And that's how I've always watched my horror movies. So, Sinners for me was an exception. And as I sat engrossed in its story, not getting up from my seat even after the credits rolled, both the mid and end credits, which, if you didn't know that the movie has both, you need to go back and watch Sinners again, which I fully intend to, as many times as I can before it leaves the cinemas because it is a masterpiece. So go back and watch the movie again and sit with it all the way through. You're welcome. But as I was saying, as I sat even after the credits rolled, letting the movie wash over me, it occurred to me that I finally had a response to a Twitter post I'd seen on the opening weekend when an older woman had asked if it was truly a horror movie, as she's someone who is scared of watching horror films. And the consensus from those who responded to a tweet was that Sinners isn't really a horror film and she wouldn't get as scared. Now that I've seen the movie, I disagree with that. Sinners is a horrifying film, not terrifying, which is the word we often reach for when we think of horror films. But horrifying in that the aftermath of the events of the film is one that to think about, to truly consider, would be horrifying to anyone who's watched it. It's the horror of brothers separated, a soul never at peace, doomed to walk the earth for all eternity. It is a horror of loneliness you can never get rid of, the horror of a young girl orphaned and a black woman widowed. It's the horror inherent in the theft of black joy and innocence. It is horror in the way in which it is real, as close to us as we can get. What do I mean by that? Well, keep watching. And it bears me stating at this point that there will be spoilers. So if you haven't seen Sinners yet and do not want to be spoiled, now is a good time to log off and go watch it. It isn't scary for those who want to know, but it is horrifying for those who are interested in the story. And with that said, let's talk about the true horror of Sinners. For a quick summary of the plot, Sinners follows twin brothers Smoke and Stackmore. They are veterans back in their hometown of Clarksdale, Mississippi, after their stint in Chicago, with money whose source we later find out would have had trouble coming to their door sooner than later. But for now, they are all about setting up a juke joint to bring their people dancing, booze, good music, and a good time. To that effect, they bring on board their cousin Sammy, son of their uncle, a preacher who is most certainly convinced that Sammy's love for the blues would definitely bring the devil calling. And he is right. But it's not the devil who comes calling, it's Remick, an ancient vampire who is attracted to Sammy's music and wants to turn him, the twins, and everybody else gathered at the juke joint into vampires. And what then follows is a night where the survivors have to make a last stand to resist the vampires until morning. And that is where the horror sets in. Because, like I stated at the start of the video, one of the horrors that we witness is the theft of black joy and innocence. And that is core to the story of Sinners. Stack and Smoke are indeed feared in their hometown. Clearly, the boys have a shoot first, ask questions later, which is something that Smoke shows us firsthand when he goes to recruit Bo and June for their help in setting up their place. But as much as they are feared, they are respected by their friends and community, and it is because of that part fear and respect that those who are ready for said good time show up at their juke joint. believing that the twins have created a space where they can let down their hair, forget the horrors of the clan and the misery of the plantation, and just groove and jive the night away. And it is this sacred space, this realm where a predominantly black group can listen to music that soothes their souls and sets their feet dancing, that Remick infringes upon. What he wants is to steal that bit of magic, to make it his, and for that, he targets Sammy and the rest of the crew, hoping to capture that bit of joy and magic and music for himself. And what makes this horrifying for me is the fact that it is a constant. This hyper focus on black joy by false allyship that wants nothing more than to milk what they can gain from it, which in turn leaves it absolutely destroyed. Because joy and the magic of it is meant to be shared and freely given. And when instead it is coveted and forcefully taken, what you get is destruction in its wake. There's also the horror of the loss of black innocence, particularly Sammy's. It was a night he would never forget, and prior to Remick showing up with his vampires, he was having a pretty good time, like he tells Stark when he shows up in the future in the mid-credits scene. Delta was accompanying him on the piano and everyone was enjoying his music. Pearline was stunning and he had found heaven between her thighs, and then everything went to hell. There's a horror in how quickly you can be soaring at the top of the world and then evil brings everything crashing down around you. I found it horrifying, the thought that June died, burned to ash with her husband staked through the heart and their daughter Lisa turned into an orphan, all in a single night. And the fact that June never really says it, but you can tell that she thinks it, that she believes herself partly responsible for her husband becoming a vampire and threatening their daughter. Because if she hadn't been desperate to leave and hadn't sent him out to get the car, he would have been inside the joint when Annie had the realization that Cornbread and by extension, Mary and Stack had all been turned into vampires. The horror of sitting with that guilt, that not only did she in a way contribute to that outcome, but that in order to protect their daughter from the monster her father has become, she would have to see their daughter be orphaned in the 1930s. A young Chinese girl, just years before World War II. And then there's Cornbread's wife, Beatrice, a young black woman who is now being turned into a widow, brought on by her desire to have her husband earn a bit more money from the twins. Because remember, Cornbread didn't want to go. He was perfectly fine staying on the plantation. Stack made him an offer he could not refuse, or rather, Stack made him an offer that Beatrice couldn't refuse, and I just imagine the aftermath of that night. Just as everybody is trying to pick up the pieces for her to realize that if she hadn't insisted, she wouldn't be a widow. Or the fact that almost everybody who was at that juke joint all got incinerated by the sun the morning after due to them being vampires. And there would be so many families bereft, dealing with the horror of so many dead, but with bodies they can never claim or recover. Just sitting in this weird space of searching for their loved ones, unaware that they can never find them because they've been reduced to ash. There's nothing for them to lay to rest anymore. That is horrifying. Same with the thought of the twins separated. The movie at the start goes to show how in sync Smoke and Stark are. Smoke reaches, hands out, no words spoken, and Stark hands him a cigarette without even looking at him. They have been of one spirit since they were born. And now one is dead, and the other is doomed to walk the earth as an undead. And that just breaks me. Especially because the character of Stark is someone who clearly loves life. That is how he was portrayed, and to have someone who is so in love with life, never truly getting to live, it's a thought that haunts me. The fact that, like Annie says, Stark would never get to be free. He would be cursed to wander the earth for all eternity unless he actively chooses to walk into the sun or is stabbed with a stake. And considering that we see him as young and charming as ever when he comes with Mary to try and turn Sammy, who had reached the end of his long life, it breaks me. The theme of loneliness, the horror of it. It is such a crucial part of the story and applies to all the characters. I will definitely make a video on that where I explore that fully, but it's definitely a lot to think about. Because sure, we all deal with loneliness. It's a pretty human emotion after all. But at least the loneliness we feel has an expiration date. At some point, it would ideally come to an end or get better. But imagine it never does. Imagine that for all of eternity, all you can do is stare into that void, that empty space, never full, never feeling or seeing any warmth. Not the warmth of the sun, not the warmth of family, of friends, of lovers, of those you've known since you were a child. Imagine staring into that abyss, the growing more of it, and realizing that there's no end in sight, that is your fate until the earth collapses into itself and all life is eradicated. I don't know about you, but there is a horror in that. One that keeps me up at night thinking way too much about this movie. But that's just me. What about you? What would you say was the most horrifying thing for you about Sinners? Please drop it in the comments. Like this video if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet. Share it if you want. Support me on Patreon if you can. And until tomorrow's video, do remember, obsessing over the things you love? Perfectly valid coping mechanism.